Hi, y'all. I'm Jo, your host and cannabis lifestyle guide. And I'm excited to introduce you today to Jeff and Diane Reed, the co-founders of Slow Dirt. And I grew up in West Texas, and we don't have soil there. We have actual dirt. So I love the name Slow Dirt because it insinuates that there's some good stuff happening. So Jeff and Diane, thank you so much for joining me and for giving us soil newbies an education today.
Thank you, Jo. Super awesome to be here with you. We're big fans and following you for some time now. And we can talk dirty.
That's right. There you go. Well, so Jeff, when we first started talking, you had said that, you know, as a lifetime organic gardener, you've been chasing all of the right ingredients to create the perfect soil. Right. So, you know, that love of gardening was your motivation. So, you know, what have you learned during this journey?
That it's okay to slow down and take some steps back, you know, that our planet has had it right all along. And through the years of development and formula changes for Slow Dirt, you know, we just figured out how to put the right ratios in a bag. Slower is always, especially when it comes to like growing cannabis, medicinals, growing food, things of that nature, you just get so much more benefit out of something that is done slowly and organically and naturally compared to like my college years, for instance, when I was taking care of some crops with synthetic soluble fertilizers, and the results that I would get from those were always just really subpar. So I had to come back around and get back into the organic swing. But, you know, when you're in college, you need it all right now. And chemicals to give it to you right now. That's for sure.
In more ways than one. That's for sure.
Indeed.
Now, a couple of podcasts ago, I had talked to the founder of 40 Goods. Her name is Sharon Kevel, I believe. And she came from the world of furniture and retail. And we were talking about the implications of fast fashion and fast furniture. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and it's the same thing that I worry that cannabis is going to, because everyone is so money hungry. They want to be first to market. They want to, you know, be the best at everything. And, you know, this reminder of taking it slow, you know, slow cannabis means something. And so I really, in my heart, identified with the name of your business, Slow Dirt.
Mm-hmm. Well, good.
So you said you started out in 2015 with this experiment to get this like amazing soil product that you have now. And you started with 4 ingredients.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the Slow Dirt trials that you had along the way.
Sure. I think I had followed a lot of studies that they were doing abroad in Poland and Japan with the efficacy of an enzyme called chitinase and what soil microbes need to consume in order to produce the chitinolytic enzyme. Chitinase being studied as a very, very potent systemic but organic line of defense for whatever you're growing. So I started to investigate particular organic soil inputs that when they were consumed by the soil microbes and beneficial fungi would produce this enzyme. So we started with those 4 ingredients. Those are like the heavy hitter ingredients of our blend. And we mixed them all up with a snow shovel in a clawfoot tub out back and started to measure up blind trials. So I don't even know, our first trial must have had 50 5-gallon pots. And we were growing a lot of ornamentals that I knew were real susceptible to pest infestation, a lot of different vegetables, for instance. But Diane here was in charge of putting specific amounts in pots and putting a colored flag in it. And I had no idea which pot had what. I was just in charge of keeping
organizing this study.
Yes, exactly.
And as the registered nurse, like
right,
you were more attuned to doing those sorts of things.
Oh, I'm sure there were placebos in there.
Well, when he had first told me he had this idea and that he'd had this idea for, I don't know, 20 some years, I said, well, we need to run some trials because I'm all about research, right? Well, we need to make sure, if it's going to work. So I did that, and it was blind trial, and I kept, and I wouldn't, give anything away. So, and again, we thought, of course, more would be better, right? And that wasn't the case. It was actually not more, kind of right in the middle. It's like, wow, that's fascinating. And then when it worked, that was even more fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was exciting. It was an exciting time. And then of course, life happens, and then we moved, and then we kept doing the research, but moved to Washington State and then continued all that research and stuff.
But I have to say that I was the super geek. So I would get off work and I would go to all the local garden centers and ask the managers of the store if I could go out back near their dumpster where they might have plants that they were getting ready to dispose of that were infested with pests. And I would find roses and snail vine just hammered with spider mites and aphids all over them. And I'd cut all that stuff off, carefully put it in the paper bag, and bring it back to our trials and purposely infest everything to see which plants were more affected than others. Again, not knowing which pots had how much slow dirt in them. I was just in charge of infesting and watering. That was my deal. And it went on for a while.
Yeah.
I love that. That's really cool. So how long did you do that? Was it through several growing seasons?
Yeah, we had 2 primary trials outdoors, sun grown. And then we were also running trials with some neighbors of ours up there in Northern California that had some indoor cannabis operations and were suffering with infestation. And it really, we'll probably talk about this a little later, but integrated pest management is a huge deal with cannabis. Those are the efforts that you make prior to growing anything to really help prevent environmental risk. So the IPM was kind of off, and so we wanted to really come in there and start injecting our product, still at the original 4 ingredients, to test the efficacy there too.
And let me interrupt. What is IPM?
Integrated pest management.
Okay. Yeah, no, I know what integrated pest management.
Yeah, IPM. Sorry.
Didn't know the IPM. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, I'm back. And you know what? That just it brings back to mind something that you said when we first spoke, that if you don't grow your soil first, then you're just growing bug food.
Pretty much. Right. Exactly. It all happens in the soil. The soil to me is like, there isn't very much of it on earth. And it's a real thin layer of hope for a guy like me. Because if we can be one of the links in the chain for change, that's where we want to position ourselves, because it's true. Joe, if you're not growing your soil first, you are just growing bug food, because through a soluble chemical synthetic operation, you're going to get the fast growth and the fast flowering you want, but your plants are going to become horribly weakened and susceptible to pest infestation. And that's just been my experience over the years. So, I should probably preface that there's no guarantee a pest isn't going to find its way into your garden. That all goes back to the IPM. But I personally, even as we move in the garden shed, I have a concentrate of spinosad, I've got a concentrate of BT, and I have a concentrate of neem oil, because I always want to do things organically and I want to time my spraying so that the pollinators are around. Very mindful of those things. But since the inception of slow dirt and its evolution in formula, I haven't sprayed once in 6 years now. Not once, never sprayed anything. Haven't sprayed anything.
Wow.
But it doesn't mean I don't get pests once in a while. I just don't care about them, because I know that as they munch away, they're done. They're done.
So let's talk about that, because after we hung up, I did my homework like a good girl. So the chitinase, that is our natural pest defense. And
super potent.
So that is, what is it? Chitin is what a lot of the what is the exoskeletons of the bugs and stuff are made. So does it eat that? Like what happens there?
It desiccates it. It's basically, chitinase is the antithesis of chitin. So those aphids and whatever pests, whiteflies, they'll get on and they'll take a bite and they'll suck in those plant juices. But what's happening is that chitinase enzyme is now in their system. It desiccates their skin. basically starting to dry them out and exposes their tiny little bodies to all the other harmful bacteria and viruses that are in the environment, and they're done.
Okay, so around the house, growing up, we would use diatomaceous earth.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like crushed mollusk shells or something.
It's basically silica. It's the crushed exoskeleton of diatoms, which is pretty much goes back to the entire root of our atmosphere on Earth. The ocean's been full of them for eons.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, one of our 19 ingredients is diatomaceous earth. So we definitely want to incorporate that silicate. And, but you're right. Like I remember my grandparents would put diatomaceous earth at their door, at the thresholds over their doors, because pests won't cross it. It's like microscopic broken glass to keep ants out of their house. You know?
Isn't it crazy? I know
It's so
like,
nuts.
You dare cross this.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and then they just like cuts their bodies all up. I mean, they're tiny little microscopic bodies. So is that kind of what's happening with the chitinase when the little insects eat that stuff? I mean, is that what's happening?
Not so much with the diatomaceous earth. The diatomaceous earth does break down slowly, but how the chitinase is formed is that slow dirt, our intended goal with the product was to feed the soil microbes that are already there. So the microbes and the beneficial fungi, very specific ones that we were targeting, when they consume the ingredients of slow dirt, they release that chitinase before their little life ends. And that enzyme over time builds and builds and builds. Like top dressing is a big part of how slow dirt works. You have an initial planting ratio, and then throughout the growing season, you're going to top dress your plants. You'll top dress your outdoor garden plot because you want to keep that chitinase production high. So as the microbes expire and then regenerate themselves throughout the grow season, they're consuming the ingredients, which then creates the enzyme, which is then taken up into the plant tissue along with water and nutrients.
Got it.
So it's sort of a built-in systemic but organic line of defense.
And so all of this is in one bag.
Correct.
So
all 19 ingredients at the ratio. We're U.S. patent pending on the formula, but we didn't invent the ingredients. The earth invented the ingredients. We just figured out the ratios of everything so that it's balanced and you get the efficacy, that there is a reliable and predictable outcome.
So over 5 years, because y'all launched the business last year during COVID.
Right in the middle of it.
Which most people would think, wow, that's insane or that's crazy. But everybody was trapped at home working on their gardens and stuff. I think it was a great time for you. So in that 5 years, you went from 4 ingredients to 19 ingredients.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. Because if you have too much of one thing, you're going to throw off something else. So that's where my work really got intensive. And I'm still testing in the basement here at our house. I've got tents down there, and poor Diane's looking at the electric bill. She's like, holy cow, just give me 6 more weeks. But I'm still doing that. And we're set on our formula now. But there are so many different dynamics that happen in a living soil system. And I really, really wanted to fine tune it for the folks that are growing indoors in containers with an organic potting mix. We're big fans of Fox Farms. We love Roots Organics. Royal Gold has some great blends, and it comes out of the bag already with some microbial activity intact. And now you start feeding it slow dirt and you get the desired results. So I've been testing and blending, making sure the pH was okay. pH was a big deal initially.
Because we're on well water.
Because we're on well water, and our well water comes out at almost 9. So you got a pH down, and it's science. Trust me.
Well, so, okay. The experiments you were doing outdoors, sun-grown, versus the experiments you were doing on indoor cannabis grows, what did you find differently? So if someone is listening and they're like, okay, I'll try slow dirt, what's the difference between the sun-grown and the indoor?
Well, for starters, nothing beats sun-grown cannabis. Sun-grown, earthen planted right in the soil, because we are co-planters. Our garden right now is full of food and cannabis. We just co-plant everything. The difference between planting in the earth and planting in a container is that in the earth, it tends to stay longer in that rhizosphere where your roots are. And there's so much more bacteria going on. Like, I think in a tablespoon of good organic soil, there's somewhere like 4 to 7 billion microbes in a tablespoon of good organic earth soil. Whereas a container gardener needs to apply a little more frequently, because every time they water, they're washing it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you get this washout of ingredients. So it's there and it's vibrant, but every single time, because there's perlite and there's vermiculite and maybe some pumice and that water, because you need good drainage in containers. So it's just an application difference, really. Like in an outdoor garden, you can top dress it like 3 to 4 weeks and still have outstanding results. But like on an indoor container garden, for instance, if you were using Fox Farms potting soil, our best results came with giving it a few tablespoons every 2 weeks, because it keeps that biological activity really high, keeps the chitinase production really high, and you're keeping up with the washout that happens every time you irrigate.
Yeah,
that's the biggest difference.
So what are some other soil science tips for newbies? Because, you know, I can't articulate a lot of questions because I don't grow. You know, I'm in a tiny space in downtown Oakland, and I'm surrounded by freeways, and there's soot on my window sill every day.
I remember that.
I'm not growing anything and smoking it.
I know exactly what your neighborhood
what is
looks
that
like.
on the window? I remember it's this, right? Yeah.
It looks like there was container ships parking in your backyard. You're like, what? You know. So organics. Say the question again. I just lost it because I went this way.
Some soil science for newbies tips. Like, you know, when we talked last time, I had this little starter plant, and I'm like, why are the middle of the leaves starting to turn yellow?
Sure. Of course. Organic approaches are always better for me, in my experience, because you're not only providing what the plant needs, you're providing for what the soil needs. So you're not only growing good crops, you're growing vegetative hyphae, you're laying down compost, you're doing things that not only feed your crop, but they feed the soil. So it's soil building happening at the same time. Whereas chemical or synthetic, however you want to call it, soluble fertilizers like Peter's Triple 20, Miracle Grow, I used all that stuff back in college because I needed my herb right now. What that does is build super high concentrations of salts. Big ammonia levels can come up. Your pH will go up. You're annihilating soil microbes and earthworms. And what you're doing is you're creating a plant that is now dependent upon that chemical, because you've annihilated the microbiome of the soil. So you're gonna get flowers and you're gonna get plants, but it is a stark contrast to what you would yield doing things organically, feeding the soil that feeds the plants, sequesters CO2. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast.
Well, yeah, and then
you know what I mean?
Us and feeding, the atmosphere, all of the things.
Yeah. Plus, you risk burning your plants up if you apply it too much. You could cook your crop accidentally if you're laying down a Triple 20 soluble fertilizer too frequently. Not only are you going to put your salt and pH through the roof, you annihilate the microbes and burn your plants. They can't digest it.
How does that happen? How does burning the plants happen? Like,
it really happens because you're putting in so much chemical that whatever microbial life is left can't digest it quick enough.
Okay.
That's pretty much how it happens. It's almost like a reverse osmosis where you get a whole bunch of salt in the soil. So water being attracted to salt is pulled out of the root instead of going into the root. So it burns up and gets all crispy, and that's done.
Okay.
I've yet to kill an organic garden. I came close though with blood meal one time, a long time ago. I laid a little too much of that stuff down, and
okay. And I have another question. I want to go back to chitinase for a minute, because when I was reading it, and it said that it also helps with the plant's abiotic stress response. And it's talking about osmotic salt, cold wounding, and heavy metal stresses. And so I'm like, is that our plant's immune system?
Yes, precisely.
Okay.
And what's so cool is like in our garden that I'm looking out right now, plants as they grow, their roots touch and they connect, and there's a communication. And I've tested phenotypic trials, I guess you would call them, same exact genetic, grown in opposite ends of the same space, getting the same sun and same water. But this soil I've been building over here in this corner, and this soil in this corner I have not, intentionally, to see if there is a phenotypic, like, is it going to affect the phenotype, perhaps the aroma and terpene profile? And it totally does. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I still am fascinated, like a 9-year-old, like, wow, like, look at that. I got to write that down.
So when it does come to growing cannabis, are there some particular cultivars that have done better for you that you keep going back to time and time again?
I've been working primarily with sativa land races. I do some breeding here too, because I'm just a super plant nerd, and I want to see what you can combine when you mix A with B and C and then back cross it with A. But there hasn't been a particular cultivar that does better or worse. There are interesting things to footnote along the way. For instance, Skywalker OG. That is a finicky plant, and I don't know what it is about that, because it's a completely legitimate flower. I mean, it's been around for a long time. A lot of folks grow it. A lot of folks find a heavy medicinal quality about it. But man, that is a finicky plant. And right next door to that, Lemon OG, perfect. Gorilla Glue, perfect. Colombian Gold, Acapulco Gold, perfect across the board. So I that's the great mystery, Joe. I don't really know, but for me personally, I'm working with sativas until I get some of those hybrids to a point where I can then bring in Lemon OG Kush, and there'll be more on that later because I'm going to win some cups with it.
Right on.
You will. You will.
So y'all started in Southern California. You're now in Washington. What have you recognized about the geographic differences in the soil and your growing techniques, and maybe how you use slow dirt?
The inland Pacific Northwest is completely different than anything I've been exposed to, especially for outdoor cultivation. There are a lot of really good indoor grow operations here around us, and on the west side too. Here in Spokane, there are some outdoor operations too, and I believe they focus primarily on indicas, 100% indicas. There could be some indica sativa hybrids out there, but our season is so short. It's just really intense. Here in Spokane, anyway, they say you can't start planting your garden until the snow is off Mount Spokane. Basically, that's been passed down as more than likely there's no threat of a hard freeze after that.
It's the growers' war.
Yeah.
But however, this year.
But however, meanwhile, and then at least for the last 3 years, we've had a hard freeze come through before Halloween. And my outdoor sativas that were looking so awesome, done. Like, they just can't do it. They can take 3 or 4 nights at like 28 degrees, but as soon as it hits 9 degrees, they're done.
Oh, yeah. So
because of that really short and intense season, I think primarily most outdoor grows here are, if not 100% indica, 70-30 indica hybrid. And my soil here, I can't speak for the entire region, is super, super sandy, and it's full of rocks. Because I guess some ancient ice dam 8 billion years ago broke up in Canada and washed and like really tumbled every stone all the way down into like Eugene, Oregon. So it's almost impossible to build a hole that's large enough to transplant, I don't know, carefully. But our garden soil, where our food and where we co-plant with cannabis, we've been building it now for 3 years, and it's delicious. It just took some time to get a lot of organic material mixed into there, along with slow dirt too. We just sort of do a lasagna where we put down a layer of slow dirt, put down our homemade compost from the year prior. We don't till, we're a no-till household, but we get it blended in there, and it's working wonderful for us. But I can't say that every operation around here also does that. It's very possible that behind those fences, they're growing in huge, like, grow bags, like 50-gallon grow bags or something. Yeah. So they can customize and be very particular about that soil. I can't say if they're in the earth.
Well, and what do you do if you're like, okay, it's gotten really cold, like you said, 3 days of 29 degrees, they can handle it, but then when it's going down, do you just like have to try to harvest everything immediately, just cut it down where it is, or do you just say, oh, well, shit, I lost this harvest?
Usually I wash my hands of it, because a sativa, the sativas I've been working with, some of them are like that could be a 12-week plant. And if it gets a hard freeze at 5 weeks into flower, that's not even a harvestable flower.
But you were talking about October. It wouldn't just be flowering then, right? I mean, here I feel like some of the early stuff starts getting harvested in August.
You're right.
Yeah.
Indicas, absolutely. You're lucky still down in California. You can get your outdoor harvest done no later than the end of September, where my flower onset doesn't start, at least last year with what I had out there, it didn't start to really make a good show until about mid-September. So by mid-October, I'm 4 weeks in. And when the hard freeze came, I was only 5 weeks in. That's not a harvestable flower. Like there's like no resin production. The hairs are nice and bright. There's no withering happening yet.
Well, but
and it's like, oh, well.
Diane, you're a certified cannabis nurse. And what about, could you not take those and use that for the THCA and, make medicine with it or something?
Yeah, you could. But I'm not there yet. But that's just, that you're right. You could do that. And that's something I'm looking into, cultivating whatever, we don't want to waste obviously anything. We want to use the whole plant. So that's something we did talk about. Yeah. But for sure.
Well, hopefully that won't happen this year. But if it does, I challenge you to go out there and make medicine out of them.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Because last year it was a real bummer, because I had pollinated them too, and I was really excited to see, the results of that progeny. And it all just kind of fell on its face, even after I tarped it. And I was trying to come up, maybe I should put a bunch of Sterno cans out there and just light them on fire every night. Keep that ambient. I'm not growing citrus here. So it was like, bummer, but oh well. And what was so interesting is that when I got this year's garden set up, there were seedlings popping out of the ground. So it did stay on the flower long enough to produce a viable seed, but I had already composted everything.
So now
I was like, now I got to start that project over.
So now we got these little random starters.
So I got all these little random starts, and I'm going to leave them, because if one of them is a girl, sweet. But if one of them's a boy, maybe I want that to dust these girls.
There you go.
So now, you know what I mean? I'm super
the
nerd.
Experiments never end.
Never.
So, Diane, with you wearing the, the nurse hat and having your cannabis nurse certification, what are your insights into what y'all are doing and how utilizing slow dirt really helps in our overall health? Like when you push this all the way forward to, yes, you have a great harvest, but then the food and the cannabis that we then consume as the end user.
Right. So you're right. I am he's the science nerd. I guess I'm a science nerd too, but the whole medical side of things. So I think for me, seeing, the ramifications of what happens, with people eating, pesticides, not knowing, we buy our food where we buy it. And then working, I think we talked about that before. I worked at Children's Hospital and CHLA and saw there, these kids would be born with cancer. A lot of these migrant farm workers that are working in our, fields, right? That they work and they cultivate food is what I'm talking about for right now. So I would see that, and we would transport these kids. Some were born with severe, birth defects. And the moms not knowing being pregnant, dad's out working in the fields like they do. They come home. They don't know, that they have these pesticides on, they're not aware, of that. And then they drop their clothes in the home that they're living in with, their children and family. Mom being pregnant is now, it's on her skin, it's on the clothes, it's in the home, right? So that was huge for me to see, kind of like I would see that over and over again, like, wow. And then I would do my own little research, like, where did this family live? And then I would see that they would live, in these areas. And that was really alarming to me, being a nurse and having a heart for like, wow, that just is horrible. We can't have that happen. And so then of course we meet, and then we start talking about, because we don't spray, do anything on our own food garden, and then the whole cannabis part of that. So I got interested in the cannabis nursing just recently because I'm working on a master's degree to finish that and become a nurse practitioner. I started that at UCLA. And a lot of it's, which I work in pediatrics right now here in Spokane. I'm a clinical coordinator for them. And I see it there too, like, wow, how is this? It's a huge deal. And so my interest in the whole slow dirt is, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you put something that you don't ever have to spray? It's going to make your food more nutritious. If you're growing food, your cannabis, it doesn't matter if you're eating it, smoking it, putting it on your body, with CBD type products and those things. You want to make sure that you know where it's coming from, because the residue, on our plants, even that goes in our gut, our food, right? So the residue of sprays or whatever you're using, and then you're eating that food or smoking that cannabis, now you've destroyed your own microbiome, right? There's a guy that we follow, Dr. Zach Bush. I don't know if you're aware.
Yeah, I love him.
Love him. And so he, again, right, is a medical doctor. He worked with women, pregnant women, OBGYN physician, worked in I can't remember, somewhere like a little different areas of Mexico. And then his whole deal was because of what he saw, right, with his patients and how they had it right all along, how they grew their food and how we don't have it right. We need to go back, slow things down. Again, he's all about the slow movement and changing that, we want to be that change like him. That's why I follow him. I think he's super brilliant. He has a lot of great ideas. So that, we could do a whole other podcast on because I have the whole nursey thing and the whole spiritual connection to the plant. There is a spirit. I believe that we have a spiritual connection, as you'll hear that saying, as above, so below. Mm-hmm. And we see it in the plant. Like, what do you do? How are you growing that plant? And are you growing it outside in the sun? I think Moon Made Farms, she talked about that. You have this connection to this plant, and the moon phases and the sun phases have a direct direct response effect on the plant and us as human beings. We're not much different than the plant or the food that we're growing, right? We're all connected.
All made of the same things.
Right. So that's my deal, without getting too woohoo about it. But I think it's fascinating. I think that's our word for the day. It fascinates us. Like, wow, and there's so much more to learn.
Yeah.
Right. And we want to teach people, there's so much more we're learning every day.
Yeah. We would never be so cavalier as to stand here today and say we know it all, because I'm always doing, our goal is to optimize your plant's defensive position naturally. You know what I mean? Because when we talked about, like Diane hit on it, in the cannabis industry, they're so heavily regulated. If you spray, they want to know what you're spraying, how often you spray it, when was the last time you sprayed. And it's just so, I couldn't imagine trying to run a successful provider operation under such a heavy veil of law and regulation. And we talked about IPM earlier, because for instance, I have magnet plants outside of my grow here. I've got a whole bunch of lupine that are getting absolutely infested with aphids, and I love it because they'll stay there.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. What are some of those other magnet plants that you like to grow that attract the bugs so that you can keep all your prize crops?
Sure. My two favorites that are always a go-to is, you want to plant brassicas like broccoli and cabbages and kale, and then nasturtium, big patches of nasturtium outside of your growing area, adjacent to it, but outside of the grow area, and you let those broccoli go to flower. You have absolutely no intention of eating those Brussels sprouts or those broccoli spears. You want them to go to flower, because as soon as they go to flower and all that sugar pushes up in the stem, it's like cotton candy to aphids, and whiteflies love it. And they just come in hordes and they'll stay there. Whereas, and my food garden is virtually pest free. Diane mentioned it. we could go out and spray those lupine right now. I've got the spray in my shed, but I haven't had to do that in some time now because I kind of want the aphids to stay there. They have everything they need on those lupine, and they're not going anywhere until the lupine goes somewhere. And by the time that happens, I will have harvested. Granted, we don't get a freeze. But like Di was saying, all of that spraying, and then you smoke it. And now that's in your lungs. Those residues are in your lungs. Or if you're making edibles and it has been treated, even with something as harmless as neem oil or pyrethrin, it's in your gut bacteria, you know, and who knows what it's doing to that internal microbiome that helps you self-regulate.
Well, and I think the thing that I pick up on here is, you know, if somebody is, you know, a backyard gardener and they have, you know, tried to figure out what to do, to know that I can buy one bag of something and that becomes my everything. It's like, it makes it simple. So now it becomes simple to grow my food at home. You know, one of the things that I had researched and had talked about in one of the sustainability roll-ups is this idea that if we're not growing our own food, or if we are not getting our food from local markets, then it's lost the majority of its nutritional value by the time we buy it in the grocery store. So it's it becomes more of a, what is the actual point of eating my greens if they've lost 90% of the vitamin or whatever.
Right.
Precisely.
Because it tastes so different. You know, go out to the garden, because we grow kale. We're big juicers. So I can't wait for that to happen. So I don't have to, you know, and I'll go to like buy all organic at the grocery store, but there's nothing like picking my own kale right out of the garden and juicing that. It's so much more green. It tastes better. I mean, maybe it's all in my mind, but scientifically it is. Like, you research the nutrients in that homegrown kale, right? I mean, you have to buy some things. I mean, I guess we could get crazy and do apples. We'll just get apples from a local, you know, because we have apples here in Washington, obviously. So those kinds of things. We want to keep it local, keep it as organic as possible. And then, you know, what I wanted to touch on too, that I didn't mention about kids, you know, working in pediatrics, not only like the kids with cancers that we talked about, but behavior issues is huge right now, you know, right? Kids with ADHD and all of that, and the medications they put on those kids on, if they would just change their diet a little bit, you know, how that would change, you know.
Well, how about all this stuff with like all these kids now with peanut allergies and eczema and all of this stuff where it's like, half this shit didn't exist when I was a kid. Or
I totally agree. I say it all the time. I did not know a child growing up that couldn't crush a bag of Reese's Pieces and go back for seconds. Right. And now every label says there was a peanut within a mile of where this candy bar was manufactured, just to let you know. What's that all about? That's genetically modified. That's destroying the soil microbiome by spraying glyphosate. And that's a whole nother podcast. It's all that crap destroying that thin layer of hope, our soil that literally regulates the temperature of our planet, filters our water, provides nutrition for our foods and medicines. Oh my God, I could really go down a rabbit hole with you, but we don't have that kind of time. Well, and so where did ADHD come from? Where did that come from?
And that's why we do a lot of our own educating ourselves with Zach, you know, Dr. Zach Bush and Farmer's Footprint. We belong to Farmer's Footprint. Vets on the Farm here. We do a lot of, you know, volunteering, and we have solar for schools, local school gardens that we want to be involved in, because it starts with the kids, right? Maybe they're not getting that food at home. So then we can teach them. Maybe they can teach their parents, you know, because you only know what you know. And if we can get the kids at a young age, like, hey, you know, tell your mom you want a garden in your backyard, you know, that's super awesome, right? So,
And there are some kids that they don't know if a potato grows in the ground or on a tree.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We want them to know where it comes from. Yeah.
I recall a camping trip a while back where a father and son had rolled up a couple sites over, and they were setting up their camp. And I overheard the little boy say to the dad, "This place smells like Home Depot." What? Take the Game Boy away.
Yes.
That's terrible.
Well, and I also like, the fact that y'all are doing this stuff, in schools, that you're trying to get kids involved. And again, that it's simple. It's so simple.
So simple.
And, so anybody who has been nervous about it or they don't know what to buy, now they have an option with Slow Dirt. So tell us how people can find you, how they can purchase your product.
We are on, we're web sales right now. In fact, we just revamped our shipping cost. Shipping is stupid. I just have to tell your viewers, we do the best we can to get it to you as quick as we can. But we're on the website. For now, my goal this year in Spokane is to get into some local retailers here. We're in a destination nursery down in Manhattan Beach, California, actually, called Deep Roots Garden Center. Super awesome store. Like, it's a destination nursery. The owner and his staff are genius. They're like one of our very first valued retailers. So they've got it on the shelf. If you live anywhere near the South Bay of LA, you can walk into their store and go home with it rather than pay for shipping and wait. So that's always a benefit. But for now, we're internet sales with local mom and pop retailers here in the Spokane area, hopefully down in Southern Oregon too. You just have to keep goal setting. We're a small company. We run it out of the business. We blend it right here. But like you stated earlier, Joe, instead of having to go out and chase down 19 specific ingredients for very specific results, we just put it in a bag, and there's nothing else like it on the market. We're super stoked. We just have to be patient with the process. Well, it's like building soil. You
and launching this year in the middle of COVID, right? Because I do help him with the business and the social media, and then I also have a full-time job, right, as a pediatric nurse, and I'm going to school for my master's degree. So I've got all these hats, which is fun because that's kind of how I've always done life. I like to be challenged, I guess, and just to keep those. Because all of it's important, right? It's all my job. Being a pediatric nurse is important. And then the whole cannabis industry is important too, because there's that facet of that education piece for me. So yeah, just hit the ground running kind of this year. So we'd love for people to so thank you for the opportunity to get the word, to get us on a podcast to talk about it, because people don't know that it's available. And, what do you got to lose to try it? Because we know it's going to kick ass because we have been using it ourselves.
It's ass so that it can kick ass. And this is slowdirt.com. That's where people go to buy it.
Slowdirt.com. You can order it there. I set up a promotional code for your viewers.
All right.
So I called it Casually Baked Goods.
Okay. And, wait, write that in the comment section.
Casually baked goods?
Like literally spelling out all of that stuff. Is it like casually baked goods all together, all strung together?
No, it's three separate words. I just put casually baked goods and the code, and they just punch in the code, because on our website you have to put in a code. They can get 20% off through the end of July.
All right. So I'm assuming this will all be self-explanatory when they go to slowdirt.com.
Yeah, it's not all one word though. But
oh, okay. I thought you said
just put the code in 05420 because it's May and it's 420.
Oh wait, I just totally misspelled everything. So what is it? The code?
Oh, 420.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we do appreciate the time, and we want to make sure that there's some added value there for anybody who might want to try it out.
Does that make sense, Joe, or do you want me to type it out?
Well, so if I go to slowdirt.com and I go to buy this stuff, is 05420 the code, or is Casually Baked Goods the code?
No, I had to title the promotion, so I titled it Casually Baked Goods, but the code is 05420.
See, Jeff, I'm going to say you gave me too much information.
I have no elevator pitch in me. I don't know how to do life.
So just the code, So they put
the promo code is 05420.
You got it.
05420.
05420.
And that's going to get them 20% off a bag of Slow Dirt?
Yep. Either size through the end of July.
All right. Yeah. I say it's do it or don't, but do.
That's a good one.
That's awesome.
Well, is there anything I didn't ask you that that we need to hear to wrap this up, or are we good?
I don't think you've missed any questions. I think we just want to make sure folks know that a vibrant living soil is going to result in a and an overall plant health that will ultimately end up in an over healthy you. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to put it in your body, you want this in your soil, give it a try. There's nothing like it on the market. And just going back to being just a single link in the chain of change. It's a big deal.
And I am going to be hanging my Oakland hat up soon and moving back to the wine and weed country so I can be closer to my farmer friends and be able to be somewhere where I can put my hands in the dirt and I can do some of these things because I do love it. I am curious about it. I'm a country girl. Like this stuff it's in my DNA. And I have just felt like, the last 3 years been in the middle of a downtown area and it was great. And it's been bumping. But all of a sudden now, we're not having events 2 blocks from my house anymore, people are coming into my studio. So I'm like, I'd rather just go, convene with nature and just kind of reboot.
Right.
Live where you're, because everyone has
Get
that
with
ability.
Grow Sisters and hang out with Tina and go back up to King's View. And I don't know. We miss all of it too. We do miss it. We miss it. But we'll crash your party when we're down there.
There you go. And I'll buy some slow dirt when I get to the country.
You don't have to pay for it.
We're going to give it to you. We'll donate it to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff and Diane, I really appreciate your time. And if my show wouldn't get yanked off the air, I would play some John Cougar Mellencamp to.
Right.
There could be some copyright issues going on there.
That you had that connection. That's really.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was such a childhood staple, driving in the car with my sisters.
Oh, yeah.
So now.
Yeah. Sucking on a chili dog outside the Tasty Freeze. That's a good song, man. I don't know how you can't like that.
It was meant to be, right?
That's right. Well,
we
thank
are grateful
you so much. So much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We are grateful.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. And thanks for hanging out, everybody.
You betcha.